I never thought helping an old man cross the street would change my life forever. But that's exactly what happened on that scorching summer day in downtown Atlanta. I'm Jamal, a 16-year-old kid just trying to make it through high school without too much drama. You know how it is? Classes, homework, hanging out with friends. Nothing special, right? Wrong. It all started when I was walking home from basketball practice. The sun was beating down hard, and I was dreaming about the ice-cold soda waiting for me in the fridge. That's when I saw him, an elderly white man in a wheelchair, struggling to get up a steep curb. He looked lost, confused, and boy, was he sweating buckets. Now, I'll be real with you. For a split second, I thought about just walking by. I mean, this is Atlanta. You see all kinds of people needing help every day. But something made me stop. Maybe it was the way he was muttering to himself, or how his hands shook as he gripped the wheels. Whatever it was, I couldn't just leave him there. "Hey, sir," I called out. "Need a hand?" He looked up at me, and I swear, time froze. His eyes, they were the strangest color I'd ever seen, almost silver. And the way he stared at me, it was like he could see right through me. "Young man," he said, his voice surprisingly strong. I seemed to have lost my way. Could you help me find my home?" Simple enough, right? Help an old dude get home. Feel good about myself. End of story. Man, was I wrong. Little did I know, this moment would kick off a wild journey that would have me questioning everything I thought I knew about my city, my world, and even myself. But here's the kicker. I had no clue who this guy really was, or where he actually came from. And trust me, if I had known then what I know now, well, let's just say I might have thought twice about being such a good Samaritan. So, you want to know what happened next? How helping this mysterious old man turned my normal teenage life upside down? Well, stick around. 'Cause this story, it's about to get real crazy, real fast. Alright, so there I was, standing on the sidewalk with this strange old man in his wheelchair. His silver eyes were locked on me, waiting for my help. I figured it'd be a quick detour, help him home, then get back to my own life. Boy, was I in for a surprise. "Where do you live, sir?" I asked, trying to sound confident despite the weird vibes I was getting. He blinked slowly, like he was trying to remember. I'm not certain. It's all rather foggy, you see, but I believe it's near the old clock tower." Now, I don't know about you, but I'd never heard of any clock tower in Atlanta. But hey, maybe it was in some neighborhood I didn't know. So I started pushing his wheelchair, heading downtown where I thought old buildings might be. As we rolled along, the old man started talking. And let me tell you, it was the strangest conversation I've ever had. "Young man," he said, his voice barely above a whisper, "have you ever wondered about the true nature of reality?" I almost laughed. Was this guy for real? Not really, sir. I'm more worried about passing my math test next week." He chuckled, but it wasn't a happy sound. "Mathematics, yes, the language of the universe. But what if I told you that your world, this city, everything you know, it's all just a fraction of what truly exists?" Now, I'm not gonna lie, at this point, I was starting to think I'd made a big mistake. This old dude was clearly not all there. But something kept me going, a nagging feeling in the back of my mind that I couldn't shake. As we turned a corner, I froze. The bustling street we'd been on suddenly emptied out, and there, right in front of us, was an enormous clock tower I'd never seen before. It looked ancient, with weird symbols carved all over it. "Ah," the old man sighed. "We've arrived." I blinked hard, sure I was seeing things. But this wasn't here a minute ago. "How?" He turned those silver eyes on me again. "Jamal," he said, and my blood ran cold because I realized I'd never told him my name. "You've taken the first step on a journey few are brave enough to embark upon. The question is, are you ready to see how deep the rabbit hole goes?" As he spoke, the air around us seemed to shimmer, like heat waves on asphalt. But it wasn't hot anymore. In fact, I felt a chill run down my spine. I stood there, my hands still on the wheelchair, staring at this impossible clock tower. Everything in me screamed to turn and run, to get as far away from this craziness as possible. But another part of me, a part one didn't even know existed, was curious, excited, even. I took a deep breath and made a decision that would change everything. Okay, I said, my voice shaking just a little. Show me. And just like that, the world as I knew it disappeared. One second I was standing on a street in Atlanta, in the next, well, I'm still not sure how to describe it. The clock tower started to glow, pulsing with a soft blue light. Then, faster than I could blink, everything around us changed. The buildings, the streets, even the sky. It all melted away like ice cream on a hot day. When things came back into focus, I nearly fell over. We weren't in Atlanta anymore. Heck, I'm not sure we were even on Earth. We stood, well, I stood. The old man was still in his wheelchair, in a massive room. The walls looked like they were made of shifting silver liquid, and the ceiling, well, there wasn't one. Above us was an endless expanse of stars and swirling galaxies. Welcome, Jamal, the old man said, his voice suddenly stronger, to the nexus. I couldn't speak. My mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. The old man chuckled. I imagine you have questions, he said. Questions? Yeah, you could say that. Like, where were we? How did we get here? Who was this guy really? And most importantly, how the heck do I get back home? Before I could voice any of these, the old man stood up. Yeah, you heard me right. The guy who couldn't get over a curb by himself just stood up like it was nothing. My name, he said, is Kronos. I am the keeper of time and space, and I need your help. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. At this point, I was pretty sure I was dreaming. Or maybe I'd hit my head and was in a coma, because there was no way this was real. But as Kronos, if that was really his name, I began to explain, I realized this was way too crazy to be a dream. He told me about parallel universes, about how time wasn't a straight line but more like a tangled ball of yarn. He spoke of a threat that could unravel the very fabric of reality. But why me? I finally managed to ask. I'm just a kid from Atlanta. I can barely keep my grades up, let alone save the universe or whatever. Kronos smiled, and for a second, he looked sad. Because, Jamal, you have a gift. A gift you don't even know about yet. And without it, everything, not just your world, but all worlds will cease to exist. As he spoke, images flashed in the air around us. I saw cities crumbling, people vanishing, entire planets blinking out of existence. It was terrifying. So, Kronos said, will you help us? I stood there, my mind racing. Part of me wanted to say no, to demand he send me home. But another part was excited. Scared, yeah, but excited too. I took a deep breath and looked Kronos in the eye. What do I need to do? His silver eyes twinkled. First, he said, we need to awaken your gift. And for that, we need to visit your past. As he spoke, one of the shifting walls began to change, forming into what looked like a doorway. Through it, I could see my old neighborhood, but it looked different, older. Kronos gestured towards the door. Shall we begin? I swallowed hard, took one last look at the starry ceiling above us, and stepped through the doorway, into my past, and towards a future I couldn't even begin to imagine. I stepped through the doorway, and suddenly I was hit by a wave of nostalgia, so strong it almost knocked me off my feet. The air smelled like my grandma's sweet potato pie, and I could hear the familiar sounds of kids playing double dutch on the sidewalk. We were in my old neighborhood, all right, but something was off. The cars looked older, the styles were different, and there was no sign of the corner store that had been there as long as I could remember. When are we? I asked Kronos, who had somehow appeared beside me without his wheelchair. About 25 years before your time, he replied. The day your gift first manifested. Before I could ask what he meant, I heard a commotion down the street. A group of kids were gathered around something, shouting excitedly. Curiosity got the better of me, and I jogged over to see what was happening. As I got closer, I realized they were surrounding a little boy, maybe 5 or 6 years old. He was crying, holding a small, lifeless bird in his hands. It just fell out of the tree. One of the kids was saying, "It's dead." My heart sank. I've always hated seeing animals hurt. But then, something incredible happened. The little boy closed his eyes, his face scrunching up in concentration. And right before our eyes, the bird in his hands started to move. Its wings twitched, then its head lifted, and suddenly it was chirping and fluttering away like nothing had happened. The other kids erupted in cheers, but I was frozen in shock. Because that little boy? He looked just like me. That's impossible, I whispered. Kronos put a hand on my shoulder. That, Jamal, is your gift. The power to manipulate the flow of time itself, to reverse it, to heal, to restore what was lost. My head was spinning, but I don't remember any of this. How could I forget something like that? Kronos' face darkened. Your gift was suppressed, hidden away for your own protection. But now, we need to reawaken it. As he spoke, the scene around us started to shift and blur. We were moving through time, watching moments of my life flash by. Times when I'd felt strange sensations, or when odd things had happened around me that I couldn't explain. Your gift has been trying to resurface, Kronos explained, but without proper guidance, it's been unfocused, chaotic. Finally, we stopped, back in the present day. Or at least, what looked like the present-day Atlanta. So how do we reawaken it? I asked, still trying to wrap my head around everything I'd seen. Kronos smiled, but it wasn't a happy smile. It was the kind of smile you give when you're about to tell someone some really bad news. To fully awaken your gift, he said, you must face your greatest fear and your deepest pain. You must confront the moment that caused your power to be locked away in the first place. As he spoke, the world around us began to change again. But this time, I recognized where we were heading. It was a day I'd tried hard to forget, a memory I'd pushed down deep. The day I lost everything. My heart started racing, and I felt like I couldn't breathe. No, I gasped. Not this. Anything but this. But Kronos' grip on my shoulder tightened. I'm sorry, Jamal, but this is the only way. Are you ready to face your past and reclaim your power? I wanted to say no. I wanted to run away, to wake up from this crazy dream. But deep down, I knew this was real, and I knew what I had to do. Taking a deep breath, I nodded. Let's do this. And with that, we plunged into the darkest day of my life. A day that would either break me completely or unlock a power I never knew I had. The world around us shifted, and suddenly we were standing on a busy street corner. I recognized it immediately. It was the intersection near my old elementary school. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might burst out of my chest. No, I whispered, please, I can't do this. But Kronos just squeezed my shoulder. You must, Jamal. It's the only way. That's when I saw them, my parents, walking hand in hand with a younger version of me. We were laughing, probably joking about something silly. It was my 10th birthday, and we were headed to my favorite pizza place to celebrate. I wanted to scream, to warn them, but I knew they couldn't hear me. This was just a memory, a replay of the worst day of my life. As we watched, my younger self spotted a stray dog across the street. Before my parents could stop me, I darted out into the road. What happened next seemed to unfold in slow motion. The screech of tires, my mom's scream, my dad lunging forward to push me out of the way. I squeezed my eyes shut, not wanting to see what came next, but the sounds, the horrible sounds, I couldn't block them out. When I opened my eyes again, the street was chaos. People were shouting, sirens were wailing in the distance, and there, in the middle of the road, Mom? Dad? My younger self was crying, shaking their still forms. I felt like I was going to be sick. This was why my power had been locked away. The trauma, the guilt, the overwhelming grief. It had all been too much for my young mind to handle. I couldn't save them, I choked out, tears streaming down my face. I tried so hard, but I couldn't bring them back. Kronos turned me to face him, his silver eyes intense. But you can now, Jamal. You have the power. You've always had it. You just need to believe. I shook my head. How? I don't know how to use it. Focus, Kronos urged. Remember how it felt when you saved that bird. The energy, the connection to the flow of time. Feel it, Jamal. Let it flow through you. I closed my eyes, trying to concentrate despite the chaos around me. I thought about my parents, about how much I missed them, how much I wanted them back. I thought about that bird, coming back to life in my hands. And then, I felt it. A tingling sensation starting in my chest and spreading through my body. The noise around me faded away, replaced by a soft humming sound. When I opened my eyes, everything was moving in reverse. The car was backing up. My parents were standing up. My younger self was running backwards across the street. Now, Jamal, Kronos shouted. Change it. With every ounce of will I had, I focused on my younger self. Just as I was about to run into the street, I imagined myself stopping, staying on the sidewalk. There was a flash of blue light, and suddenly, everything changed. My younger self blinked, looked confused for a moment, then turned back to our parents. The car drove by harmlessly. We all continued walking to the pizza place, safe and sound. I fell to my knees, exhausted but elated. I did it, I gasped. I saved them. Kronos helped me to my feet, a proud smile on his face. You did more than that, Jamal. You've unlocked your full potential. You're ready. As the world around us began to fade, returning to the strange, starry room we'd started in, I felt different. Stronger, more confident. Like I'd finally found a piece of myself I didn't know was missing. But one question was still nagging at me. Ready for what? I asked Kronos. His expression turned serious. To save not just your parents, Jamal, but all of reality. The real challenge is about to begin. As we stood there in the Nexus, I realized my life would never be the same. I had the power to change time itself, but with that power came a responsibility I was only beginning to understand. Back in the Nexus, I felt different. Stronger, yeah, but also like the weight of the world, no, all worlds, was on my shoulders. Kronos stood before me, his silver eyes gleaming with a mix of pride and worry. So, I said, trying to sound braver than I felt, what's this big threat you keep talking about? And how am I supposed to stop it? Kronos waved his hand, and suddenly the starry room around us transformed. We were surrounded by swirling images of different worlds, different timelines. It was beautiful, but also kinda overwhelming. What you're seeing, Jamal, is the multiverse, Kronos explained. Infinite realities, all existing side by side. Your power allows you to navigate and influence these timelines. Okay, I nodded, trying to keep up. But what's threatening all this? Kronos' face darkened. We call it the Void, a force of pure nothingness that seeks to erase all of existence. As he spoke, I noticed something in the swirling images around us. A patch of, well, nothing. Just empty blackness, slowly growing, swallowing up the colorful scenes of different worlds. That's it, isn't it? I asked, pointing. The Void? Kronos nodded grimly. It's spreading faster than we anticipated. If we don't stop it, it will consume everything. Every world, every timeline, until nothing remains. I gulped. And you think I can stop this? Me? A kid from Atlanta? Not just you, Kronos said. There are others like you, Jamal. Other gifted individuals from different realities. Together, you form the last line of defense against the Void. As if on cue, 3 shimmering portals appeared in the room. Out of each stepped a person about my age, looking just as confused as I felt. There was a girl with fiery red hair and freckles, her green eyes darting around the room. Next to her, a tall boy with dark skin and dreadlocks, looking like he'd just stepped out of some futuristic sci-fi movie. And finally, a shorter girl with almond-shaped eyes and blue streaks in her black hair. Meet your team, Kronos said. Aiden, Zara, and Maya, each with their own unique gift, just like you. The redhead, Maya, spoke up first. Okay, what the heck is going on here? One minute I'm in Dublin, the next time, wherever this is. Join the club, I said, offering a weak smile. I'm Jamal. Apparently, we're supposed to save the multiverse or something. Zara, the girl with the blue streaks, raised an eyebrow. Right, and I thought my day couldn't get any weirder. Aiden, the tall guy, just nodded at me. So what's the plan? How do we stop this Void thing? We all turned to Kronos, expecting answers. But the look on his face made my stomach drop. The truth is, he said slowly, we're not entirely sure. The Void is unlike anything we've faced before. But we believe that your combined powers, working in harmony, might be able to seal it off. Might? Zara asked, sounding skeptical. Kronos sighed. It's our only hope. But first, you need to learn to control your abilities, to work as a team. As he spoke, the room around us changed again. This time, it looked like some kind of high-tech training facility. This is where your real journey begins, Kronos said. You'll train, learn to master your gifts, and prepare for the fight of your lives. The fate of all realities rests in your hands. Looking around at my new teammates, I could see a mix of emotions on their faces: fear, excitement, disbelief. I'm sure my face looked the same. This was crazy. Yesterday, I was just a normal kid. Now, I'm part of some interdimensional superhero team, but as scared as I was, I knew we had to try. The void was real, and it was coming. We were the only ones who could stop it. All right, I said, trying to sound confident. Where do we start? Kronos smiled, but there was a sadness in his eyes. With the hardest lesson of all, you must learn that sometimes, to save a world, you have to let one die. And just like that, our training began. But little did we know, the void was growing stronger by the second, and our first real test was coming sooner than any of us could have imagined. The next few days, or was it weeks, time felt different in the Nexus, were a blur of intense training. We each had to learn to control our unique gifts while also figuring out how to work as a team. Maya, it turned out, could manipulate energy. She could create force fields, shoot energy blasts, that kind of thing. Aiden had super intelligence. He could process information faster than any computer. And Zara? She could phase through solid matter like it wasn't even there. As for me, well, I was still getting used to my time powers. It wasn't just about changing the past anymore. I could slow down time, speed it up, even create little time bubbles where different rules applied. It was wild. Kronos pushed us hard, harder than I'd ever been pushed before. We ran simulations, fought holographic enemies, and practiced combining our powers in ways I never thought possible. But something he said on that first day kept nagging at me. Sometimes, to save a world, you have to let one die. I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being prepared for something terrible. Finally, after what felt like months of training, Kronos gathered us all together. "You've come far," he said, his silver eyes scanning each of us. "But now, it's time for your first real mission. The Void has targeted a specific reality, and you must go there to stop it." We all looked at each other, a mix of excitement and fear on our faces. "What do we need to do?" Aiden asked, always the practical one. Kronos waved his hand, and a holographic image appeared in front of us. It showed a world that looked a lot like Earth, but with some key differences. The continents were shaped differently, and I could see flying cars zipping between gleaming skyscrapers. "This is Earth 731, Kronos explained. "The Void has created a focal point here, a weak spot in reality. If it breaks through, this entire world will be consumed, and the Void will grow exponentially stronger. So we go in, find this focal point, and seal it up," Zara said, cracking her knuckles. "Sounds simple enough." But Kronos shook his head. "It's not that simple. The focal point is a person." We all fell silent. Maya was the first to speak up. "What do you mean, a person?" "In this reality, a scientist named Dr. Elena Vost has created a device that can peer into other dimensions," Kronos said. "But her experiments have weakened the barriers between realities. She's become a living gateway for the Void." I felt a chill run down my spine. "So what do we do?" Kronos's face was grim. "You have two options. Either convince Dr. Voss to shut down her experiments voluntarily, or eliminate her." "Eliminate?" I gasped. "You mean, kill her?" "That's insane," Maya shouted. "We're supposed to be heroes, not murderers." Kronos held up his hand. "I'm not saying it's the right choice, but you need to understand the stakes. If Dr. Vost continues her work, or if the Void takes control of her, an entire reality will die. Billions of lives, gone in an instant." We all stood there, stunned. This was what he meant about letting a world die. Sometimes, the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. Or the one. "The choice will be yours to make when the time comes," Kronos said softly. "But remember, every second you hesitate, the Void grows stronger." With heavy hearts, we prepared for our mission. As Kronos opened a portal to Earth 731, I looked at my teammates. We were just kids, thrust into a situation with impossible stakes. But we were also the only hope for countless realities. Whatever happens, I said, we stick together. Deal? They all nodded, determination replacing the fear in their eyes. Deal, they said in unison. And with that, we stepped through the portal, ready to face our first real test as defenders of the multiverse. The moment we stepped through the portal, I knew we weren't in Kansas anymore, or Atlanta, in my case. Earth 731 was like something out of a sci-fi movie. Flying cars zoomed overhead, holographic billboards floated in midair, and people walked around in clothes that looked like they were made of liquid metal. Whoa, Maya breathed, her green eyes wide with wonder. Focus, guys, Aiden reminded us. We're not here to sightsee. He was right, of course. We had a job to do, and the fate of this entire world was hanging in the balance. Using the intel Kronos had given us, we made our way to Dr. Voss' laboratory. It was a massive, gleaming structure that seemed to shift and change as we watched, like it couldn't decide what shape it wanted to be. I've got a bad feeling about this, Zara muttered as we approached the entrance. We didn't even have to break in. The moment we reached the door, it slid open with a soft hiss. It was like the building was inviting us in. Or maybe something else was. Inside, the air felt wrong. Heavy, somehow, like there was a storm brewing. We followed the winding corridors, our footsteps echoing ominously. Finally, we reached what had to be the main lab. And there she was, Dr. Elena Vost. She was hunched over a console, frantically typing away. But what caught my attention was the swirling vortex of energy behind her. It was beautiful and terrifying all at once, with tendrils of darkness creeping around the edges. Dr. Vost? I called out, trying to keep my voice steady. She whirled around, and I felt my heart sink. Her eyes were completely black, like empty voids. The void had already started to take hold. "Who are you?" she demanded, her voice echoing strangely. "How did you get in here?" Aiden stepped forward, always the diplomatic one. "Dr. Vost, we're here to help. Your experiments, they're tearing a hole in reality. You need to shut them down." For a moment, I saw a flicker of the real Dr. Vost in her eyes. Shut them down? But I'm so close to a breakthrough. I can see them. Other worlds, other realities. Those realities are in danger because of what you're doing, Maya pleaded. "Please, you have to stop." But the darkness in Dr. Vost's eyes was growing. "No, no, I won't stop. I can't stop. The knowledge, the power." Suddenly, tendrils of darkness shot out from the vortex, wrapping around Dr. Vost. She screamed, a sound that chilled me to my core. "We have to do something," Zara shouted. Without thinking, I reached out with my power, trying to rewind time around Dr. Vost. For a moment, it seemed to work. The tendrils retreated, and her eyes cleared. What's happening?" she gasped. "Dr. Vost, please," I begged. "Shut down the machine. It's not too late." She looked at me, then at the vortex behind her. I could see the struggle on her face. But then, I can't," she whispered. "I'm sorry." The tendrils surged forward again, faster this time. In seconds, Dr. Vost was enveloped in darkness. When it cleared, what stood before us wasn't human anymore. It was a being of pure void, with Dr. Vost's face twisted into a cruel smile. "Your reality will be the first to fall," it said in a voice that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. We all looked at each other, the same realization dawning on all our faces. We were out of options, out of time. "Guys," I said, my voice shaking, "I think we know what we have to do." Maya's hands began to glow with energy. Zara's body shimmered as she prepared to phase. Aiden's eyes darted around, no doubt calculating a dozen strategies at once. As for me, I took a deep breath and reached deep inside myself, calling on every bit of power I had. This was it, the point of no return. "I'm sorry, Dr. Vost," I whispered. Then, louder, "Team, let's end this." And with that, we launched into the fight of our lives. A fight not just for this world, but for all worlds. A fight that would change us forever. Everything happened so fast. One moment we were facing the void-possessed Dr. Vost, and the next, All hell broke loose. Maya struck first, sending a blast of energy that the void entity easily absorbed. Zara phased through its attack, trying to get close enough to disrupt its form. Aiden was shouting instructions, his mind working overtime to find a weakness. And me? I was doing everything I could to slow down time around the entity, to give us a fighting chance. But it wasn't enough. The void was too strong, too alien. It lashed out with tendrils of darkness, sending us flying across the lab. Equipment shattered, alarms blared, and the vortex behind the entity grew larger by the second. We can't beat it like this. Aiden yelled over the chaos. Jamal, we need to combine our powers. I nodded, understanding immediately. We'd practiced this in training, but never under these conditions. It was risky, but we were out of options. Everyone, to me. I shouted. My teammates fought their way to my side. As one, we joined hands, forming a circle. I could feel their energy flowing into me, Maya's raw power, Zara's ability to phase through reality, Aiden's incredible mind. I focused all of it, along with my own time manipulation, on a single point in space and time, right where the void entity stood. The world around us seemed to bend and warp. I could see multiple timelines converging, possibilities collapsing into a single moment. It was beautiful and terrifying. With every ounce of will I had, I pushed all that energy towards the void. There was a blinding flash of light, a sound like reality itself was tearing, and then silence. When my vision cleared, the lab was in ruins. The vortex was gone, and where the void entity had stood, there was only Dr. Vost, collapsed on the floor. We rushed to her side. She was alive, but barely. The void was gone from her eyes, but so was any trace of the brilliant scientist she'd once been. Did we do it? Maya asked, her voice shaking. Aiden nodded grimly. The focal point is closed. This reality is safe. But at what cost? I couldn't help but think. We'd saved a world, yes, but we'd also destroyed a life. Dr. Vost would never be the same. As if reading my thoughts, Zara put a hand on my shoulder. We did what we had to do, Jamal. Remember what Kronos said. Sometimes to save a world, you have to let one die, I finished, the words tasting bitter in my mouth. We made our way back to the nexus in silence, each lost in our own thoughts. Kronos was waiting for us, his silver eyes unreadable. You've done well, he said. Earth 731 is safe, and the void has been pushed back. But this was only the beginning. He waved his hand, and the room filled with images of other worlds, other realities. In each one, I could see the telltale signs of the void's influence. The fight continues, Kronos said. Are you ready? I looked at my teammates. No, my friends. We'd been through hell together, and I knew this was just the start. But I also knew that together, we stood a chance. We're ready, I said, speaking for all of us. As Kronos began to brief us on our next mission, I couldn't help but wonder. How many more impossible choices would we have to make? How many more lives would be changed forever because of us? But I also knew that we were the last line of defense against a threat that could end everything. And no matter the cost, we had to keep fighting. Because if we didn't, who would? The multiverse was counting on us, and we weren't about to let it down. As we prepared for our next mission, I realized that my life had changed forever. I wasn't just Jamal from Atlanta anymore. I was a defender of reality itself. And somehow, I knew that this was only the beginning of our story. Back in the Nexus, the weight of what we'd just been through hit us all at once. We'd saved a world, sure, but the cost, it was almost too much to bear. I can't stop thinking about Dr. Vost, Maya said, breaking the heavy silence. What's going to happen to her? Kronos' expression was solemn. She will be cared for, but the damage done by the void, it's not something that can be easily undone. I felt a surge of anger. There has to be a way to help her. With all our powers combined, Dash. Jamal, Kronos interrupted gently. I understand your frustration, but you must understand. Some consequences cannot be avoided, even with the power to manipulate time. His words stung, but deep down, I knew he was right. We'd made a choice, and now we had to live with it. Aiden, ever the practical one, spoke up. So what's our next move? The void is still out there, right? Kronos nodded, waving his hand to bring up a holographic map of the multiverse. Indeed, while you've dealt it a significant blow, the void is far from defeated. It's regrouping, searching for new vulnerabilities. Great, Zara muttered. No pressure or anything. As Kronos began to explain our next mission, I found my mind wandering. I thought about my life back in Atlanta, my friends, my school. It all seemed so distant now, like a dream I'd had long ago. Jamal? Maya's voice snapped me back to reality. You okay? I nodded, trying to shake off the homesickness. Yeah, just thinking. She squeezed my hand, understanding in her eyes. We'd all left our